George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We've got a brother who we feel real good about. Dr. Lomax Campbell is the CEO of the Third Eye Network and the interim CEO of the Rochester Economic Development Corporation. The brother's busy, and he is going to be helping us in the Syracuse with a Black business directory. But wait, that's not all. Today is the start of National Small Business Week. So we thought a brother who's not only in a small business, but also working with small businesses, why not get this brother on to talk about some of the work that he is doing? So Dr. Campbell, AKA Lomax, good to see you, brother. And let's talk about the significance of National Small Business Week.
Well, first off, it's good to see you today, Brother Kilpatrick. You're looking good over there with your blazer and your chain on. I feel underdressed. I feel like I should probably pull mine out just so
You might as well. Just go ahead. Just go ahead.
I feel like I can hang with you a little bit. Pull my necklace out. But no, it's exciting to be with you again. I think this is our second show together.
Yes.
And just to talk about the importance of National Small Business Week, this is a program that was established by the U.S. Small Business Administration.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone that knows that organization, they fund a number of organizations across the country that provides a plethora of resources to small businesses. They fund the women's business centers across the country. They fund SCORE. They fund the Apex Accelerator. They were also recently the funder of the $100 million Community Navigator pilot program, which my organization was a beneficiary of, as we led the Rochester Economic Development Corporation's program originally as a contractor for about 2 years. And so it's a very important organization that is showing the value of small business to the U.S. economy. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important. On a more philosophical and historical level, National Small Business Week is important because it celebrates one of the primary ways that people have built wealth in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, you would either play the stock market, right? You'd work a job and invest in the market, and you'd build wealth over time because you'd be able to retire from the growth of that investment. Another way would be through real estate. So historically, people become homeowners. That was the first step at taking your family to that wealth building level, because you'd be able to borrow from the equity in your home to eventually get other properties or do whatever and pass that home down to the next generation. Business was one of the four original, right? Owning a company that generated revenue would allow you to create jobs and create multiplier effects as employees spent that money locally. And so Small Business Week, National Small Business Week, celebrates that. And just to finish it out, because I'm funny like that, one of the other ways was inheritances beyond real estate, insurances, things like that, passed down, jewelry, things like that, passed down. And the other one was hitting the lottery, which most of us don't get to do in our lifetime. So I just think it's important to create that space to celebrate it and support it as a country.
And your work, you have your PhD. Remind us what your PhD is in and the work of the Third Eye Network.
Sure. So for the listening audience here, I actually have a Doctor of Management degree from the University of Maryland Global Campus, where I studied niche market strategy and organizational culture change. Third Eye Network itself is my brainchild. It started as a commercial photography company in 2003 and grew into an advertising and marketing agency by 2008. I closed it in 2012. And when I relaunched it, I launched it as a management and marketing strategy consortium operating in the fourth sector of our economy back in 2020. We work across the country with public sector agencies, whether it's federal, state, local, county. We work with foundations and funders collaboratives. We're doing some work with a school district out in Michigan. We've done work with bank foundations and economic development corporations. Apparently, we're running one now. And our work is broad. We do everything from strategic planning to economic recovery planning to entrepreneurial ecosystem building to coaching and advising executives of organizations trying to build out their organizations or their government agency. Um, One person called us a baby Deloitte in training not too long ago. So that's what we do at Third Eye Network.
And for people that don't know, Deloitte and Touche, are they by themselves now, or just Deloitte? Right.
I think it's just Deloitte, but they're one of the largest global consulting firms in the world with over 300,000 employees. We're about 8 employees plus me. So so I got a long ways to go to catch them, but you know, we're
and
essentially a broad-based service provider.
and I recall you telling me your research was very specific around it black businesses or black entrepreneurs, and specifically around that. What was your research on?
Sure. So in my dissertation research, I was looking at the fact that modern societies were increasingly multicultural, but organizations and systems, no matter what system that we're talking about, no matter what organization we're talking about, if they're not also equally diverse and trying to stay what I call culturally congruent with the people they employ or serve, they're going to go out of business. They're going to fail to be successful. And that's a school district, that's a municipality, that's a foundation, that's a bank, that's a small business. If they don't strive to stay fully culturally congruent with who they employ and who they serve, they will cease to be relevant and successful in the future. Um, my applied research since graduating has been largely in the entrepreneurial ecosystem building space. And so I think that's the hallmark of our work. We've done a ton of work. I want to say around 18 cities now, between some partnerships with National League of Cities or direct contracts we've received, where we work with communities to improve the environment in which businesses are conceptualized, developed, and sustained. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? In Rochester, New York, that might look like even before um, serving as a third-party administrator of the Rochester Economic Development Corporation, that would look like when someone comes to our organization for funding, but they're not ready for funding yet, we may refer them over to Consumer Credit Counseling Services of Rochester to start saving 10% of what they're asking for and working on increasing or improving their credit. If they're a woman in business, we may refer them over to the Rock Women's Business Center to attend classes and get technical assistance around their business plan. We may encourage them, if they're home based, to talk to our friends at the RIT Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and see about locating their business out of there. Because if we're going to be combining our funding with public sector funding from the city or county, they have to be in a commercially zoned brick and mortar establishment. So home-based businesses need not apply, not for us, but for some of our partners.
Right.
So entrepreneurship is a team sport. By us coming together around business owners, we can work more efficiently and more effectively to help them achieve their goals. And going beyond just trying to team, we're actually cooperatively fundraising and putting our dollars directly into our partners so that they can cover their operating expenses while serving our shared clients.
Mm.
That's the kind of work we're most known for.
So where did I get the idea that there was some specific work around black entrepreneurs? Where did I get that from?
Well, because Rochester is largely black. And so a lot
So
of this,
is that by
yeah,
default? Okay, there you go. Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
40% of my city is people of African descent, 17% Hispanic. And I'll fold in back around the time that Brother Trayvon Martin was killed. Uh, as we saw with every other murder, assassination of black men, I don't want to list all of them, but Philando Castile, Michael Barber, to name a few, and there were many, many others in the last 12 years or so. We saw on social media where black and brown people would go online and post, hey, post a black construction firm that can blacktop my driveway,
Mm-hmm.
post a black grocery store, post a black nail salon, because we don't want to give these other folks our money. And when the emotion dissipated, we realized folks went back to Target, they went back to Walmart, they went back to Wegmans, they went back to other places that did not show um, appreciation for their dollar, that did not advance this cause of investing in us. And so, as a public service, we ended up creating a platform called Black Owned Business Rochester, and we launched it around that time in 2012 and organically grew a database of over 700 Black owned businesses.
Wow.
Um, I noticed that anytime Black people were suffering, utilization of the site went up, more listings were submitted to the platform, and during times of perceived peace and being post-racial, you saw participation in the site go down. So there's an indirect relationship
Hmm.
between suffering and Black support. And so this year, as I've been thinking about what my company's social impact work was going to be, I was thinking it was time to rebuild the platform and make it a national platform. I wanted to use my staff's time to reskin it, rebrand it, um, think through different pages, functionality, and features, and be able to partner with local organizations in each community to be the ones that hold that platform for us so that we could revenue share with them and be able to provide a central hub or central hubs throughout the country where they can find their Black owned businesses, their Black oriented associations, and their Black operated nonprofits.
And so you are working with whom in the Syracuse area?
So in the Syracuse area, we begin talks with your local branch of the NAACP, and we begin talks with the Upstate Minority Economic Alliance about the possibility of teaming up on this. Back home, we've talked to the Greater Rochester Black Business Alliance, and we're encouraged by your NAACP branch to also loop in our NAACP branch in Rochester. So these are some of the things that I guess are on the horizon. As always, this is something that I've done as a labor of love or as a passion for impact in our community.
You know, talking to Dr. Lomax Campbell, he's the CEO of the Third Eye Network and also the interim CEO of the Rochester Economic Development Corporation. And so, thinking about transferring wealth, and you gave a great dissertation earlier about how wealth is transferred in our communities, and um, one of our partners, Vicky Brackens, is always talking about zero no more, where we want to create generational wealth now, as opposed to each generation in Black families, unfortunately, having to start from scratch over and over again. What have you found out about that?
I found out we have to do a lot of work. We have paradigm shift to focus on. What it all boils down to is very often we don't own anything as a community. We may own our home for a moment. We may own our car for a moment. We know that vehicles are depreciating assets.
Hmm.
However, a work vehicle can generate revenue for you when you put it to work, even though the asset itself depreciates. Oftentimes, what differs between
But can you pause right there?
go for it.
Can you be more specific when you say your work vehicle can work for you?
Absolutely. So some people may see me driving around Syracuse and Buffalo when I'm in town in Syracuse. I currently drive a yellow Jeep Gladiator pickup truck. And that's by choice. It could have been a Mercedes Benz if I wanted it to, but I chose to buy a Jeep Gladiator pickup truck because I figured I wanted a vehicle that can satisfy a number of different needs. I wanted a recreational vehicle. Of course, I can take the doors and the top off of it and take the windshield out and, be on the beach somewhere. But I can also put something in the back and haul it because there's a 5 foot bed in the back of the truck. So I've moved office furniture from where we've purchased furniture and brought it to my office over here in downtown Rochester. I've bought a tow package for it when I ordered it, so that I could also pull things, whether it was for someone else for pay or whether it was for my own stuff connected to my company. And because it also satisfies IRS requirements for the tax deduction, and I know we're not having a whole conversation on wealth and tax strategies, but it's eligible for the Section 179 tax deduction, where because it's over 6,000 pounds, the gross vehicle weight rating, I can depreciate it over time or take the deduction all in 1 year. So it satisfies all of those things. I can put it to work for me. I can play with it because I can pull a camper, right? Um, it's also very visible. So from a marketing and branding standpoint, I can leverage that. And so that's what I'm saying. If you were a plumber, a carpenter, a business owner, a homeowner, you can put vehicles to work for you. If you ran a daycare and decided to get a van or a 3-row SUV, you could legally, transport your kids with it. The kids that you're babysitting or doing your daycare business with. So you can make those vehicles work for you, even though the resale value declines over time. You can generate your revenue from putting that vehicle to work.
Mm. So, in the context of that, we're talking. You were giving an example of different ways and strategies that our community can begin to see wealth differently and get this paradigm shift. What else has to shift?
Our our mindset around what role does recognition and celebration play in what we're doing.
Okay.
Some communities will come together and begin to buy up things, initiate events and activities, initiate companies, and no one person have to shine, no one person has to get the credit for it because they know that what they're doing together is bigger than what any one of them can accomplish by their own individual effort. And while we may sometimes articulate that intellectually, when it comes down to operationalize that concept, we tend to fall short. Sometimes we'll have the all you have to do mentality, right? Oh, you can do this right quick, whatever. Sometimes we have the you got to crawl before you walk mentality, and we never get from crawling to walking. We never get from walking to running. We never go from running to driving, right? And so playing that long game, we tend to get our movements and our initiatives busted up, right? We deviate from the course. And so there's a collective mindset shift that we have to have that says, listen, we may not agree on everything, but our shared best interest is that our children's 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 children need to be better off than we were.
Mm.
And so as long as we can keep that in front of us, every step we take is going to keep us aligned and organized. And we should enjoy some of it. But you have counter narratives like YOLO, you only live once. You have counter narrative like, ball till you fall. I don't know if folks are using that same terminology
I haven't
today.
heard that one.
Um, I'm not gonna date myself too much, but I think it was in the Nostradamus album where he was I
Okay.
think he was dissing
Okay.
Jay-Z. He said, well, I ain't gonna go there, but but the lyric was in that in that opening line where he said, if you want to ball till you fall, I can help you with that, you know.
Mhm.
But that language just kind of speaks to the high level view of the culture. We've bought into this mainstream worldview of individualism, when in reality, our folks have always been individuals, a part of a collective.
Yeah. This is I think this gets to the heart of it. But so how does that thinking, that's easier said than done. I'm just getting to, because I'm thinking that, yeah, we're gonna get together and we're gonna put our money together, but how much money, whose money? How does that work practically? And do you have any examples, Dr. Lomax Campbell, CEO of the Third Eye Network, interim CEO of the Rochester Economic Development Corporation? Where's the example of how this collective strategy has worked, even if it's few and far between?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I will say it manifests in so many different ways. At the most grassroots level, every Black person I know can speak to the time when they got off the bus or got home from school. They didn't go to their house. They went to grandma's house. They went to auntie's house. They went to their friend's house. They did homework over there. They ate over there, and they was picked up by their parents later. So it literally was the village that raised them, right? We already
Mm-hmm.
see that. We know immigrant communities that come over here, and it's funny, the call before you, I actually had this conversation with one of my colleagues and collaborators out of Kansas City. When immigrants come over here, whether they're from the Middle East or East Africa, right? They'll co-locate in a home, start a store or some other business, and they would live together in that house so they can save money, right? While getting that store successful. And they'll all work in that store. And they'll get to the point where they can open another store in another part of town or down the street. And once they got two or three stores, they'll get a second house. They'll bring more family from out of the country and they'll co-locate in those two or three houses. And they repeat that pattern till every family has their own house and every family has their own business. And they'll do that. Now in the Caribbean, they call that something different than what they call it in West Africa. In West Africa, Nigeria specifically, they'd call it a susu.
Mm.
And we saw that the brother Jadena even had a song that celebrated the power of susu. And I'm not talking about that weird game or program that folks were doing on like Telegram and WhatsApp where they were trying to convince people to put their money together in a pot
Yeah.
and and ripping people off. That I mean, that's the bastardization of this traditional
Yeah. Like it's supposed like
concept.
what people would do is like you would put all this money in and then it was like a circle or a wheel or something like that.
They were abusing this practice and tradition. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But there is a software platform today called Isusu that allows folks to put their money together towards properties and improving and building their credit. So these are called rotating credit associations if someone wanted to look up how those work. But that's just one way to do it. Um, Once upon a time ago, FSG, which is a national consulting firm, wrote an article in 2011 in the Social Innovation Review, and they called it Collective Impact. And it was the first attempt to create a scholarly or professional report that talked about multiple organizations coming together, working on the same problem to have a collective impact. And it required those folks to have a shared vision, key, common measures of performance, having a backbone team or core staff that served all of the organizations working together. So they had that administrative uh, coordination function going on. And there was about five elements in that. There have been so many articles on collective impact since that initial 2011 article, and that is spread like wildfire across the country in social practice. A similar practice or two other practices that comes off of this same thinking, community wealth building. That concept is the operationalization at the macro scale, at the regional, local levels of this traditional concept, this traditional village concept. And so is entrepreneurial ecosystem building.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll make it a little more tangible for you. There's a brother out of Chicago who operates an amazing company called Chicago Trend. They own five shopping malls, strip malls, with about 300 local investors between Baltimore and Chicago. Literally, residents of those communities have an equity stake in strip malls that they've purchased. So as those properties do well, the community do well. So this is not foreign or merely the domain of immigrants. This is not something that hasn't proven itself. I mean, the US stock market, the New York Stock Exchange is one big collective pot of us being confident to put our money together to give it to companies that are using it to grow with the promise and premise that we're going to get some of it back.
Mm.
So we already have these things, but it's on the fringes of how we think about building wealth. It's on the fringes of how we think about life, and we don't do it together within our community. We participate in all these other structures that and systems that others have put in place and don't realize we can benefit ourselves from using it.
It sounds very philosophical to me and yet practical. So I love this discovery. You know, you're telling me about Chicago Trend, talking about Susu. I love it. So what's our walking instructions for National Small Business Week as it pertains to Black folk? What you want us to do? Talk
So
to me.
let's make it very tangible and very practical. A lot of us will start businesses as solopreneurs. 96% of all Black-owned businesses are owned by one person or partners with no employees. Only about 4% employ at least one person. For those of you that are courageous enough to begin to do something bigger than what you're able to do on your own, certainly you can use 1099 contractors, subcontractors, but think about teaming with other people who have businesses whose services complement your own, and eventually buying and investing in things together that you all need. So think about the restaurant, the caterer, and the person that organizes events. You're all going to buy paper plates. You're all going to buy salt and pepper. You're all going to buy pickle relish and all the things that you need to do your business.
Sure, true.
Buy it together. Buy it in a block to try to bring down the cost for every time you purchase it. Get shared storage somewhere and keep your surplus somewhere together. You know, you can label stuff and organize things the way you need to keep your stuff separate from the others, but learning to trust one another. That's one thing that our trauma over the millennia, uh,
Truth.
over the centuries, have stopped us from being able to do. The markets work when we trust them. Other people's businesses grow because they trust each other, or at least they trust that they're trying to keep us out and keep themselves in. We need to learn to trust each other. We need to get opportunities to practice trusting each other. And we need healing. We need therapy that allows us to say, you know what? I'm going to try this again, even though I'm predisposed to not wanting to collaborate. For those of you who have employees, do you take some of your profits at the end of the year and share it with your employees if you exceed your goals for that year?
Mm.
You know, is there an opportunity for those employees that have been with you for a very long time to take an equity stake in your company, even though they may not have decision-making authority in the business? What that shows them is that you're invested in them, and people invest in people who invest in them. So what can you begin to do together as you begin to do business together? That's the question.
Mm. That is the question. That is the question. I guess we'll leave it at that. Say that question again, though. So for the people in the back.
What can we begin to do together when we begin to invest together?
What can we begin to do together when we begin to invest together? National Small Business Week starts today. Something to think about. Something to think about. Dr. Lomax Campbell, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh man, I'm so accessible. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook every day. But folks can, of course, go to www.thirdeye.network. They can also call 585-877-MGMT. That's short for management. 585-877-MGMT, which is 6468. Either of those will get to my firm, and always happy to talk to the community.
Always. And, you know, you're continuing for people in the Rochester area, they just come see you, right?
I mean, if they can make it through my admin, they can come see me.
Well, for the economic development stuff.
Oh, they can come to us every day for that.
Yeah.
So for right now, the best way to reach us there is going to be redcorock.com,
Right.
RECOROC.com, redcorock.com. We also have an info email. It's info@redcorock.com.
All right. Dr. Lomax Campbell, Brother Lomax, we thank you so much for being on the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Inspiration for the nation.